The first one is Mr. Hercules Haralambides, who comes from Greece and who is director of the Erasmus Center of Maritime Economics and Logistics in Rotterdam and director of the Center of Maritime Economics and Logistics. Mr. Haralambides, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for the introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. By looking at your eyes, this tells me that I will have to try to make it as brief as possible. And usually what I do in such circumstances is to say a joke. But I'm afraid in this particular case I don't have one. So I thought maybe I could ask you one question, a question that someone asked me in the bus as we were coming from the hotel to Kimpo Airport. And my co-traveler there, who was one of the speakers in the previous session, he said, "What is the value of the ocean?" And he took me a little bit aback, because I was thinking about it. He says, "Well, we are talking about the ocean. What is the value?" In these days, we tend to translate everything into commercial monetary terms. So how could we then give an answer to such a question? And with this, I modified a little bit my presentation or my intervention, I would say, from what I had in mind. And I decided to look very briefly, I will not take more than 5 of your minutes, if I may, into two heavy users of our oceans and our costs. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this is what I do on a daily basis to earn a living. And these are shipping, and the use this makes on our oceans, and ports these days, and the use they make on our coastline. To start from shipping, needless to say, of course, that 71% of our planet being covered by water means that 80% of our trade, international trade, has to take place by sea. The number of ships that they ply our oceans is a bit more than 33,000 that you heard before. I would tend to say is about 60,000, crisscrossing all sorts of routes of our planet. As a matter of fact, I must say that these ocean transportation and communications, that they are the two major ingredients of what we call these days globalization. And without international transportation, needless to say, of course, there will be no trade, no growth, no welfare as we know it today. However, and this is my point, we have a lot of ships plying our oceans of a quality lower than what most of us would like to see around. As a result of too much competition in this business, as well as a fairly weak regulatory framework when it comes to policing and enforcing international laws and conventions, makes us see in our oceans ships that we would rather not. Korea is very active, very energetic, and very influential, I would say, not only in law-making in the context of the International Maritime Organization, which is a United Nations body established in London just to make standards and rules for international shipping, as well as effective and active in regional port state control initiatives, which are cooperative efforts of lateral countries to check, control, inspect, and often punish ships that they do not live up to the expectations that they have assumed when their country signed and ratified their protocols. The conclusion of this then to my first 2 minutes is that the use of the oceans in this regard has to be done very responsibly, not only by those that they are exploiting it commercially, like the ship owners, but also by those which in one way or the other try to control this process and the externalities that international transportation is creating. When it comes to ports, these days ports are good business. Container terminals are very profitable business. Everybody seems to be willing to invest in those. However, we are stuck, given booming trades and good performing global economies. Our ports are congested. New ports are being developed and they are mushrooming one day to the other. Hundreds of new ports are being created, or older ones are being developed, quite often far excess of demand for port services, also in their efforts to compete among themselves, as well as to be able to accommodate ships that these days are becoming larger and larger. The impacts, environmental and other, of port development of our coastlines is very significant in terms of disturbing ecosystems, habitats, dredging materials, disposition of polluted dredging materials, and other aspects of concern. Ports will have to manage this, not only their development, but after this, the way that they operate. As a result of competition among them, governments and port authorities need to give them the necessary leeway to operate in a commercially minded approach, competing with other regional ports. The relationship, as we have heard from the first speaker, between the port and the city is a very crucial one. It has to be developed in a way that is balanced. On the one hand, affording the port the commercial autonomy to compete with others. On the other, being controlled by society and by the regional authorities, both in terms of environmental impacts as well as economic power that it can have over the exports of a certain country. Again, and I conclude, Mr. Chairman, my intervention, Korea is quite often showing the way forward. Good examples being the new port developments and management in the new ports of Incheon and Gwangyang. So I would say there would be no better theme than the oceans and the coast for a country as maritime as it is Korea, who has proven it over the years, being first in shipbuilding in the world these days, as well as being one of the very, very few that even have a ministry specialized and dedicated only on marine affairs and fisheries. I would like to stop my intervention at this point, thank the organizers for inviting me to say these few words, and in my little effort contribute to the extent possible to Korea's bid to win EXPO 2012, for which I would like to wish you the best of luck, although I believe you will not need it from what we are experiencing today and I'm sure tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.